A new San Onofre settlement spells out some relief for customers. And what's next for the investigation?
When I first got out, just kind of felt alone and no one was really helping me. I didn't feel like I was connected to anybody.
It could be a matter of life or death for some veterans, improving access to mental health care and supporting the rest of the VA system.
This, in fact, is our new American moment. There has never been a better time to start living the American dream.
Calls for unity on Capitol Hill and reaction to the president's message to immigrants. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. San Diego ratepayers could pay about $70 less on their electric bills over the next 4 years. That's thanks to a settlement reached this week with the operator of the San Onofre nuclear power plant. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John says ratepayers will no longer be paying for the plant.
Under the new settlement, the utility companies agreed to stop charging ratepayers for the cost of shutting down San Onofre in 2013. The nuclear power plant closed because poorly designed new steam generators developed a radioactive leak. In 2014, the California Public Utilities Commission approved a settlement that left ratepayers covering most of the $4.7 billion cost of the shutdown. Mike Aguirre is a lead attorney in the case. He says even under the agreement reached this week, ratepayers still end up paying more than half the $4.7 million cost of the premature shutdown. But he says consumers will save more than $775 million on their future bill.
Not paying any more money is not the same thing as getting all the money back that you paid. There's no mincing words on that. But, we had to make a judgment call.
Some consumer groups like Public Watchdog are angry that ratepayers have already been charged over $2 billion for the San Onofre shutdown in their electric bills over the past 4 years. They're also angry about the way the original settlement was approved. The San Diego Union Tribune revealed that then president of the California Public Utilities Commission, Michael Peavy, and Edison executive Stephen Pickett had met secretly in Warsaw, Poland to agree on the terms. An investigation into how that original settlement was reached will be shelved if the California Utilities Commission approves this latest deal. Ironically, the day after the financial fallout from the closure has been settled, Edison moved the first canisters of spent fuel from the fuel ponds at San Onofre into dry cask storage. This radioactive waste is being stored in vertical cylinders partially buried on site, 100 feet from the ocean. A separate legal battle is underway to try to find alternative storage sites for the spent fuel rods, which will remain radioactive for thousands of years. Allison St. John, KPBS News.
San Diego health officials say a 10-year-old boy has died from flu complications. He's among the 32 flu-related deaths reported last week in the county. Health officials say the boy had other medical conditions. He had not had the flu shot. He's the second child to die of flu complications in the county this season. This season, there are a total of 206 flu-related deaths in San Diego County. Hundreds of people who are homeless got some much-needed help downtown today. The San Diego Housing Commission held its 12th annual Homeless Resource Fair at Golden Hall. KPBS's Matt Hoffman has more.
I don't even remember who told me, but someone said, yeah, hey, they're going to be passing out stuff at the Civic Center tomorrow.
Willie Bradley was recently evicted.
It's been tough. It's been kind of tough. I've been out on the streets and, money's been tight. I have a job interview tomorrow for another job, and I'm praying that things go well with that.
This is Bradley's first time at the resource fair and was happy to learn he could bring along his dog Bunchy.
One thing I know, boy, he barks at everything going. I'm glad to have him. And he's the perfect dog for me.
With help from County Animal Services, Bunchy got some much-needed shots.
It's all right, baby. Your daddy's right there.
And a microchip in case he's lost.
All right, appreciate it. And I'm sure he does, too.
The San Diego Humane Society watched Bunchy while Bradley headed inside to check in. He first went upstairs to get a hygiene kit.
Sock, shampoo, conditioner.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
And some clothes.
We got large or extra large?
Extra large.
Did you want to get your blood pressure checked too?
Yes.
Father Joe's Villages gave Bradley a checkup and
Say
he got his teeth looked at too.
She says good news, there's no swelling or anything like that, but they set me up for an appointment to get a full dental exam.
By 11 a.m., over 500 people had showed up for the event.
I was just mainly coming to try to see if I can get clothing, maybe some blankets. I haven't got the shoes yet, but I'm still waiting on that.
Dozens of services were made available for free, including vaccinations.
Flu shot? Yeah, need that. I don't know if I got one last year or not, but I'm not sure, so I ain't gonna take no chances.
Bradley was also able to get a much-needed trim.
If they can get cut, yes, I'll appreciate it because they need it. These old feet gonna thank you.
Bradley did not find a new pair of shoes and was not able to get a haircut, but he says the trip to Golden Hall was well worth it.
The people that I've came in contact with made it easy for me today. That gave me more confidence going into my interview tomorrow. At the end of the day, I know, in my heart that people out there really care.
The last thing on Bradley's list was checking out housing options and picking up a hot meal. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
President Trump makes a pitch for unity in the face of a divided Congress. Last night's State of the Union address blended calls for optimism with warnings about drugs, deadly gangs, and what he describes as violent immigrants living in the United States illegally.
Struggling communities, especially immigrant communities, will also be helped by immigration policies that focus on the best interests of American workers and American families. For decades, open borders have allowed drugs and gangs to pour into our most vulnerable communities. They've allowed millions of low-wage workers to compete for jobs and wages against the poorest Americans. Most tragically, they have caused the loss of many innocent lives.
Republican watch parties cheered on the president last night. Trump supporters in Tampa, Florida, gave him credit for doing what he said he would do.
We that believed in Trump to be our president, we can gladly say he has fulfilled his promises to the American people, and we will stand behind him for the next 3 years and the 4 years to follow that. This is only the beginning of Trump's success for America, and he will only make America greater than it is, like he promised.
Border residents were also paying close attention to the president's State of the Union address. The president's tough rhetoric on immigration has contributed to a drop in business in communities like San Ysidro, which relies heavily on Mexican consumers.
Many San Diego residents were hoping Trump wouldn't mention the wall because it's such a divisive topic. It's even held up negotiations on an immigration bill in Congress. But the president reiterated the need to build a wall. Jason Wells, the CEO of San Ysidro's Chamber of Commerce, says Trump's talk of the wall was disappointing because it's already created so much animosity in Mexico and is affecting businesses in the U.S.
It's the psychological wall that he's already built that we're suffering from. So we lost, from November 2017, there was a drop in about 35% of the revenue coming in, sales in San Ysidro.
Trump's repeated mentions of the innocent lives claimed by immigrants was also alarming to residents. Meanwhile, many Border Patrol agents were glad the president mentioned the wall because they think it will make their jobs easier and safer. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Republican Congressman Darrell Issa praised the president's speech. The lawmaker from Vista urged both parties to work together to seize the so-called new American moment. He also said in a statement, the American economy is roaring and the future of our nation is now, in many ways, looking brighter than ever. Reaction to President Trump's first State of the Union address continues to pour in. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh sat down with Congressman Scott Peters.
Congressman Scott Peters says reaching compromises on issues like an infrastructure bill, maintaining cross-border trade, or health care seem a little more elusive after President Trump's first State of the Union address.
Well, I was a little skeptical that we would get the speech about unity that he promised, and he certainly started out that way. But then he really proceeded to to deliver a speech to his base, his political base, which was very divisive. He did Trump.
Peters was one of 24 mostly Democratic congressmen who invited someone who faces deportation if Congress doesn't act on the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. Karen Mahina has roughly 240 days before her work permit expires.
I thought it's important to highlight that these people they're us. They're our neighbors, they're our friends, they're our students. And the woman I took, Karen, was a remarkable young lady. She was #2 in her high school class. Went to San Diego State. She wants to become a doctor, serve underserved populations.
Peters believes there is a workable compromise on the table that can allow so-called dreamers to remain in exchange for enhanced border security. He doesn't support a major expansion of the border wall. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Karen Mahina says she was looking for a unifying message from the commander-in-chief. From the Medill News Service, reporter Jeannie Zaye Hernandez says the president's comments on immigrants hit close to home.
As Karen Baena sat inside the House chambers, she says she could feel the divide.
I think being there and feeling like there was a lot of hate towards my community, I was just standing and taking everything in.
When President Trump referred to chain migration and said Americans are dreamers too, Baena had a strong reaction.
He also talked a lot about ending chain migration. That's a family reunification program. The term itself is very derogatory.
Because Americans are dreamers too.
I agree. Americans are dreamers too, but dreamers are also American.
Of our framework generously offers a path to citizenship for 1.8 million illegal immigrants who were brought.
Yeah, there's 11 million undocumented individuals, so 1.8 is it's like a bargaining chip. So I feel like a bargaining chip.
Despite the tension she felt in the Capitol, Baena left the State of the Union saying the experience reinforced her reasons for pushing forward.
I think at the end of it all, I also gave me courage to understand what I was fighting for and why I was there and why my.
In Washington, D.C., Jeannie Zaye Hernandez for KPBS News.
Congressman to take other dreamers.
Adela de la Torre will take the helm at San Diego State University in June. California State University trustees announced the choice this morning. De la Torre is currently the vice chancellor for student affairs at UC Davis. KPBS education reporter Megan Burks had a chance to speak with her.
De la Torre says one of the first objectives of her presidency will be to help the university grow enrollment. Admissions have grown just 3.5% in 5 years, despite growing demand.
Right now, that it is landlocked and it's full of capacity. It's important to know how we are going to grow, where we are going to grow, and in particular, looking at the Imperial Valley campuses, how they will contribute in that way, as well as the Mission Valley project.
De la Torre said she's interested in adding majors and graduate programs at the Imperial Valley campus in San Diego. Voters will decide whether the school can expand into Mission Valley later this year. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, Senator Bernie Sanders responds to President Trump's State of the Union address. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
It feels more like spring in San Diego today, and it's going to get even warmer tomorrow. Erin Calandra has more in tonight's forecast.
Hopefully you enjoyed your day today. It was pretty beautiful. Weather-wise, no complaints. It's not as windy as it was over the weekend and not quite as hot either. Not much happening here across the county. It's pretty quiet, not just here, but across the southwest. You can see all as far north as Redding. We're not really seeing much activity. For tonight, it's going to be pretty calm and clear. 54 degrees in the metro area. Oceanside 43, Ramona 43, and Poway 48 degrees. Alpine reaching 46 degrees for the overnight low. On Thursday, well, that warmth continues. Not much happening. It is just going to be beautiful. Temperatures are still above average, but we're not seeing any record challenging temperatures like we did over the weekend. So San Diego 72 degrees tomorrow. We should be at 65. So that's a warm day, pretty pleasant. Poway 82 degrees, Ramona 82, and Alpine 78 degrees. Plenty of sunshine for everyone to enjoy. enjoy. This weekend, it's going to stay dry and warm. We have this big ridge in the jet stream, so we have some nice warm air flowing in as far north as Oregon. We also have a big dip in the jet stream. That's allowing some frigid air to come down from the north, keeping people in those northern plains and Midwest chilly, even a little bit of snow here or there. And that means if you're traveling to Minneapolis for the Super Bowl Sunday, well, pack a sweater, because boy, is it going to be chilly. We're talking single-digit temperatures. Nothing like here. Along the coast here, we're in the 70s all week long with beautiful sunshine, maybe a cloud here or there. Inland, we're in the 80s all week long. Look at those temperatures. Very nice and warm with lots of sunshine. And in the mountains, that's the cool spot, of course. Temperatures in the 60s, low to mid 60s throughout the week. And in the deserts, well, we're in the 80s as well. Very warm and beautiful with beautiful sunshine to enjoy. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Ebony, back to you.
There's a push to help ease a massive backlog of asylum applications to the U.S. Immigration officials say they will review the latest applications first. Applicants who've been waiting longer will be pushed to the end of the line. They say this will help prevent fraud. Immigration attorneys call the move absurd. The agency has more than 300,000 applications waiting to be processed. Costs continue to climb for those who have lost property in last fall's wildfires. New state numbers show the amount of insurance claims stands at $11.8 billion. More claims are expected from the deadly mudslides in Santa Barbara County. The slides happen in communities impacted by the Thomas Fire.
And the state law is that if the evidence shows that a uncovered peril, in this case the mudslides, was caused by a covered peril, in this case the fire, then they should pay. And that's what the preliminary indications are, and that's what I expect them to do.
The state is ordering insurance companies to speed up claim processing times. That includes waiving a requirement for policyholders to submit detailed home inventories. To drive down the suicide rate among veterans, beginning in March, the VA will automatically enroll most new vets in mental health care. People who work with vets say it's a great idea, but worry the impact on the already strained VA. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh has the story.
I've been here for just about 2 weeks.
Philip Faustman joined the Army in 2012, just after the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
I mean, just like in the Army, you put all of your stuff down below. I waited for the repeal, and so I joined the Army to kind of prove that I could do it, you know? Books, clothes.
He says he suffered sexual trauma that led to a diagnosis of PTSD and depression. Discouraged, he left the military in 2015.
When I first got out, just kind of felt alone and no one was really helping me. I didn't feel like I was connected to anybody, and so I had my suicide attempt.
Periodically homeless, he didn't turn to the VA. He found the enrollment process daunting.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, the San Diego native says he tried a private clinic in New Orleans.
It was a religious program, but I didn't realize how overly religious it was, that they didn't approve of homosexuality. So it was just kind of like every day was berating, and just it wore on me.
The year after a veteran leaves the service is a vulnerable time. Veterans describe the experience as almost like losing a family. The VA knows these new vets have a higher rate of suicide than the overall veteran population. Faustman counts 3 suicide attempts in the last 2.5 years. But recently, Veterans Village, a San Diego nonprofit group, helped him apply for his military paperwork.
I'm on a housing list already.
And he's now enrolling in VA mental health care. He just wishes it had happened sooner.
I would have had that immediate access to therapy, to seeing the doctor, to, getting in touch and just finding out, what hospital I can go to and actually seeking treatment instead of just waiting, hoping to, fill out the right form and eventually get called.
The VA is about to target transitioning veterans by automatically enrolling nearly all of them into VA mental health care for 12 months. When you leave the service, you're in, without a lot of paperwork or hassle. Kimberly Mitchell runs Veterans Village. She sees cases like Faustman all the time. Not all veterans struggle when they leave the service, but those who do can be really tough to reach.
In the military, you're taught to work things out on your own. You're taught to figure out solutions. You're taught to, in other words, suck it up, figure it out. And unfortunately, sometimes that same mentality transitions with that service member.
I think it's really, really hard.
Carolyn Allard headed the San Diego VA program on sexual and interpersonal trauma until she left for private practice 6 months ago. She's seen the risk factors among her clients.
They are at high risk for having the mental health conditions that contribute the most to it, like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, like depression, which goes hand in hand with PTSD often. They're also at high risk for traumatic brain injury, which also is a risk for suicide.
The VA has the most experience treating those risk factors. Can 1 year really make all that much of a difference?
It can. Actually, some of our most effective treatments for PTSD take 12 weeks on average.
We want them to get the highest care and the care that they so richly deserve.
President Trump signed an executive order requiring the VA within 60 days to begin automatically enrolling new veterans in mental health care. The problem is the VA and the military have always struggled to coordinate. Allard and others who work with the VA worry that's way too fast.
I don't see it happening very quickly. The VA is a huge entity, bureaucracy, like any other big bureaucracy. Things are not going to move fast.
The VA hasn't outlined how the new program will work. It estimates 32,000 veterans will take advantage of it. Senior administration officials say it will cost more than $100 million, but no new money has been allocated. Sherman Gillums Jr. is worried about the execution. He helped veterans file for benefits in San Diego before becoming AmVet's chief strategy officer.
And when you're talking about a few million people getting out in the next 5 years and offering them a service, you'd better be able to take care of those who already are in the system and need the services. And mental health was an area where the Department of Veterans Affairs needed to do a lot of work.
Veterans organizations like AmVets hope to help the VA hammer out the details. They'll have to work quickly. The White House deadline is March 9th. For KPBS News, I'm Steve Walsh.
California will not ban the use of styrofoam food containers. A bill before the state Senate fell 3 votes shy of passage this week. The proposed law would have applied to restaurants, grocery stores, and other food vendors. Supporters say it was a modest step to reduce pollution. Critics argued the law is unnecessary because many businesses are choosing other ways to package food. It's not every day you get to meet one of your heroes, but seniors at Olympian High School did today. They got to speak with Jean Bauer, author of the book they've read called Farm Sanctuary, Changing Hearts and Minds About Animals and Food. Bauer is an animal activist and hopes his visit inspires students to think about what's on their plate.
Most of us also grow up eating animal foods that come from factory farms without thinking about it, and so we unwittingly support this horrible system. And so paying attention to that and then making mindful choices is ultimately what I hope to see happen. And I think at this school it's been amazing to talk to the students who are really thinking deeply and I think are inspired to do very good things.
As students, we have a role in our community to help them, and specifically toward animals, even though they are not like, for example, people. They do have rights. They do have rights, and it's really inhumane if they are not treated adequately as we are.
Each year, the students pick a book that challenges social injustices and the status quo. Bowers was this year's pick, and students plan to raise money for his nonprofit. One of the hottest racetracks on the East Coast may be a frozen lake. Every winter, motorcycle riders buzz around slick tracks plowed out atop frozen water. AP reporter Michael Hill explains why some riders like the ice better than your typical racetrack.
A sheet of ice would make most drivers nervous, but that's what these motorcyclists wait for all year. Call them freezy riders. They appear to defy physics and maybe common sense as they go full throttle on frozen lakes in upstate New York.
So the adrenaline of going 70 miles an hour and dragging across the ice is something you can't find anywhere else.
Riders race on ice thicker than a foot. It's part of a winter tradition in cold weather climates around the world. Bikes have studded tires. Hundreds of sharp screw heads provide traction to lean into turns. but riders still spill out sometimes.
But it's a lot easier on your body when you fall. You kind of slide out. On dirt, you tumble, cartwheel, and really get hurt.
Ice tracks can be temperamental. Warm spells cut short seasons. This winter's severe cold spell added another element of danger on Great Sacandaga Lake in the Adirondacks.
I think we got here, it was like negative 15 or something. I think it's right about negative 3 or 4 now. It's really all in the face. Kind of got to watch for frostbite.
On a recent Saturday, more than 100 people showed up to watch races on another lake. Temperatures were mild this time, but the ice stayed thick as racers kicked up frosty clouds in their wake. Michael Hill, Associated Press, Bern, New York.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.